Well, welcome to another Live with Lisa Michaels accountability show. Tonight we have, again, on the show with us a wonderful man who is making every effort to try to right the wrongs that are going on in Washington, D.C., and he has some very precise suggestions on what he thinks should be done to improve our situation, improve our economy, and to stop the lawlessness that appears to be becoming a regular part of Washington, D.C. politics. I am, of course, talking about James Buchal, and James is on the phone with us right now. James, welcome to the Live with Lisa Michaels show.
Thank you, Lisa.
Well, James, you wanted to discuss, and I've been telling people on the various social sites, you wanted to discuss the lawlessness that is going on in Washington, D.C., and how the GOP is or is not actually addressing the issues involved with the executive branch trying to overstep its constitutional boundaries. So first of all, I think it'd be a great idea if you would, James, of course, if you don't know, you're listening to the show, is running for Congress to replace Earl Blumenauer in Congress in the Portland, Oregon market. So I think it'd be a good idea for you to outline the most egregious lawless behavior as a Yale Law graduate and a practicing attorney in both California and Washington State and Oregon. So what are the lawless things that are outside the Constitution that the executive branch is doing right now? James Buchal.
Well, one of the most significant ones that some important information came out about today is the operations in Benghazi and the whole essentially assertion of the president that he can just sort of go to war with whoever he wants, whenever he wants, and Congress doesn't really have a say in it.
Wow.
Beyond that,
yes.
what's been prominent in recent months is the executive branch essentially just refusing to cooperate at all with Congress in disclosing information it doesn't want Congress or the public to know. And we've seen that when they were running guns to the Mexican gang. We saw it about Benghazi. It's seen in the healthcare context. It's just, the lowest learner IRS thing. There's all this illegal activity going on. And when Congress finally rouses itself to ask a question about what's going on, the answer is you don't need to know.
Yeah. As you were so famously said in the campaign trail when you ran for Attorney General, don't pay any attention to the man behind the curtain. Yes, as Lois Lerner, the attacks on the Tea Party, especially one that's near and dear to my heart, and I watched the testimony in Congress, is True the Vote. And as if anybody does not know, James Buchal was my attorney while he was running for Attorney General. And we filed, with some other folks, a lawsuit against the Secretary of State of Oregon to try to stop her lawless behavior and define the clear statute saying that they should destroy the unused blank ballots. And I'm convinced beyond a shadow of a doubt that the only reason that the Democrats have been winning anything is because of severe election fraud. Twice as many people, 2-1, agree with us and are conservative as opposed to liberal, and so if they're going to win anything, they're going to have to do something like that. But all of this is all about a big power grab. They love it, they want it, it's a drug, and they want to keep it, and that's what I think they're doing. So, what if as an attorney, what should we be asking our congressmen and our senators to do to hold this out of control narcissist in the White House to at bay? I mean, to stop him, hold him accountable.
Well, what's interesting is, there's a lot of popular belief that we're sort of over-lawyered in this country and people even play lawyer ball instead of basketball or whatever. And I think to a certain extent that's true in this context. When Issa and his subcommittee were investigating Lois Lerner and were investigating Fast and Furious, their first instinct is to sort of gear up with a bunch of lawyers. But if you look back at the history of Congress, once upon a time they said, well, wait a minute, we are an independent branch of government. We're 1/3 of the government here. The legislative judicial, executive, we're right up there with the others, and we have a whole lot of inherent power to get what we want that doesn't involve, bowing down in front of the executive branch or the judicial branch. Because I tell you what, they file some suit in court, and then the executive branch shows up and says, oh, well, they're wrong, and then the judicial branch sits on it, and then maybe after about a year, a decision is made, and then the executive branch appeals, and they're playing in the wrong field. They need to be playing in their own house. And in the old days, if somebody would go over to Congress and sit up in front of Congress and say, I'm not going to give you those documents, we don't want to, they would send the House sergeant at arms to arrest him and put him in jail down in the basement until he coughed up the documents. And that just turns all the tables around, because then it's up to the other side to lawyer up and go into the courts and try and get the courts to get the guy released out of the Capitol basement, and it totally changes the nature of the game.
Yeah. Is there actually a jail in the basement, James, that I don't know about, or you just...
I don't even know if it's still there, but it used to be there, and they do have an inherent power to do it. And what's interesting is the Congressional Research Service has just published, I guess back in 2012, a very long analysis of the congressional power to punish contempt of Congress. And sort of contempt of Congress is sort of getting in the way of what Congress wants to do. And Congress has extensive investigatory powers, and the Supreme Court has said, its power to investigate is essentially coextensive with its power to legislate. In order to legislate, you need to be able to gather the facts, and we can't have people getting in the way. And so, they review all these historical examples, and I think actually the last time it was used was in 1935.
Wow.
So I don't know whether they've still got a cell down there, or whether they put him in a conference room or what.
Yeah, when I took my tours of the Capitol building, of course I had to take it with Congressman Walden, because all the other congressmen are just, I had such antipathy towards them. I'm so not in their camp that I couldn't bring myself to contact one of them. But yeah, I don't remember seeing that. I did see the first chamber, much smaller area down there, but that's. So if you get to Congress, when you replace, and the good citizens of Portland, Oregon, realize that you are by far the most qualified and would be the most effective representative of their wishes in Congress, what would you like to do as a congressman to hold the executive branch accountable and get these people off the dime? Because we're fed up with it. I almost think it's worthy of filing of treason to even for these leaders in the Republican Party in Congress and those ones in the Senate that are allowing this to continue to go on. They took a vow to protect and uphold the Constitution, and they're shirking their duties by a long shot. I mean, when you take a vow to support the Constitution, what are the penalties for not upholding your vow? Are there any?
Well, I mean, the traditional view is we just have to let the voters take care of it, and the courts have often held that all kinds of important legal questions are there, just political questions. Let the voters take care of it. But then when you get into a situation where, there's this vast power of incumbency and the incumbents are sort of reelected on a frequency that, is something that was sort of invented by the totalitarian states, and there's all these questions about voting machines and voter fraud and entire districts where 99% of the people vote one way or 100% of the, it's not, we would hope that
there's total fraud.
Yeah, there's clearly a lot of voter fraud going on, and the mere fact that they would take that poor true the vote woman and just, totally ream her and send investigator after investigator after her at the request of these Democratic members of Congress shows that they're threatened by investigations into vote fraud, even as they say it's not occurring. So, but to go back to the larger question, what can you do? I mean, you have to go to Congress and you have to say, we've got to stop acting like everybody's little servant here. We've got to start acting like the real representatives of the people with the ultimate power here to say what goes and what doesn't go. I mean, this is an institution that I think has a police force of 30,000 people. I mean, they have a whole lot of power to take on and confront lawlessness by the executive branch. And if we just hear about them filing lawsuits and then a year goes by and 2 years go by and nothing happens, they're not really trying to solve the problem. And we've seen that especially on the intelligence side of things. There's a Senate Select Committee on Intelligence and a House Select Committee on Intelligence. Procedures on those committees, if they see something going on that they don't like, the mere fact that the executive branch says it's classified, that doesn't mean they just have to sit there and take it. There are procedures for them to go public with information and for the Senate to vote and say, we'll be Snowden. We don't need Snowden to steal all our stuff and take it to the Russians. We're upset with what's going on, and we'll tell you about it. But all of these great defenders of civil liberties we have, the Blumenauers and the Wydens, and they didn't lift a finger. They just sit there and they're complicit in the thing. And then, of course, most importantly, they keep shoveling tens of billions of dollars to build a totalitarian, surveillance state.
It's outrageous. It's totally outrageous. I mean, you've been doing your NSA expose, I like to call it, dog and pony show around the Portland area, and you're open to speaking to other groups if anybody would like to contact you. If they want to contact you and volunteer on your campaign or would like you to come and speak on any issue, you don't have to even speak about your campaign, then how would they get a hold of you, James Buchal?
The best way is through the website, my last name, BUCHAL.com. Very simple.
That is very simple. And got a Facebook page, James Buchal for Congress, and Twitter @JamesBuchal. And you can find out a lot about the latest things. But no, there are so many things. This is a time when we have got to call to our fellow conservatives, our fellow Tea Party people, everybody who cares about the future of our country for our children. You have got to get active during your primary. You cannot wait until November to vote and get involved. You've got to do it now. And here in Kansas, I'm supporting Milton Wolf, who's running against a guy who's been in Congress about as long as an elected office, about his entire life. He actually had a little bit of a life before he got into Congress, unlike your opponent, Earl Blumenauer, who graduated from college and got into promoting making it 18-year-olds could vote. That's what he hangs his hat on. And he's been in elected official, whether local or Congress, for his entire life. And the guy needs to figure out what it's like to get a real job. He has no idea. I heard McGovern, when he finally got out of elected office, he went up and tried to start a
that was a great story.
Belly. Do you know about it? A little bit more about it?
Well, he got involved in trying to run a hotel, and he quickly discovered that all of these federal laws that, of course, he had blindly supported, as they operated on the ground and interfered with his trying to run the hotel, they put him out of business, and it really opened up his eyes. But of course, it was too late. I mean, we do have a congressional class that is so insulated from real life that they have no concept of how their actions actually reverberate in the real world. I was reading something the other day about banking and banking regulation, and they're all very concerned about people putting their money abroad and not paying taxes on it. And as a result, it's essentially now impossible for American citizens to open bank accounts in foreign countries. And that all sounds very nice to them because you can't take your money out, and so what? But, we live in an interdependent economy now, and what that means is that no ordinary person can now really set up an international business or can expand his business abroad. He has to grow a little bit and then sell out to one of these multinational corporations that has affiliates everywhere, and it's just a crushing blow to sort of the development of international business, but no one even thinks about it. Everyone thinks about it in terms of tax compliance.